You are tuned in to a fireside chat with Zany Mystic. Join us now on another exciting metaphysical journey. Relax, tune in, drop out, and take a seat by the fire as we explore new realms and possibilities. This is Magenta Pixie. You can find me at magentapixie.weebly.com. But now, here is Zany Mystic and guest. Enjoy the show.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a fireside chat with Zany Mystic. I'm your host, Lance White. Tonight, Mark Borax returns for another fireside chat. Mark is the founder of Soul Level Astrology, which he created in 1987, marked by the harmonic convergence. A nomadic poet his whole life, in the 70s he traveled the U.S. and Canada, performing and selling his poetry. In the mid-'80s, Mark was befriended by his adolescent idol, writer Ray Bradbury, who became his literary godfather, encouraging him to write those books that he had within him. In 1984, he became a comic book writer and a managing editor of Comics Interview magazine. In 1998, Mark rode his Harley-Davidson lowrider through the U.S. and Europe, stopping for a year in the Tuscan countryside of northern Italy. Mark's first book, 2012, Crossing the Bridge to the Future, is a bestseller that describes the author's 7-year apprenticeship to visionary astrologer Ellias Lonsdale. Under the redwoods in Northern California, they created a mystery school which birthed a new form of astrology called Star Genesis that helps people contact their core nature and life purpose. Mark's new book, co-authored with Ellias, is a cosmic weather report that inspires readers to rethink the whole purpose of humankind and bring on a new future. I'm delighted to welcome Mark back to the show and also to announce that Ellias Lonsdale will be with us next Saturday in a rare radio interview from his home in Hawaii. But tonight, let's welcome Mark to the show. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Great, Lance. Good to be back.
It's good to hear you again. Well, it seems like a lot has happened since you were on the show the last time, and I just wanted to say I think your new book is wonderful. It's just a terrific guide to navigate these times.
Thank you. We wanted to find a way to present an experience of our teleclasses to people by creating a sort of an open classroom and bringing the reader right into the experience of us discussing these important changes that are going on.
Mm-hmm. And I also was a little bit taken aback by your April weather report, which is on your site, www.markborax.com. So I'm going to kind of let you take over, and the listeners will probably want to know what your take is on what's happening in the world. And you mentioned the untelevised revolution. We can start wherever you like.
Yeah, I feel that both the Cosmic Weather Report book that we're talking about, that Ellias and I co-wrote, as well as my monthly Cosmic Weather Report newsletter, which is a free newsletter available by email through my website, markborax.com. In both of those venues, I'm doing my best to inspire people to find a powerful, transformative current that's running underneath so many of the intense and dark and difficult changes of our time, of our moment in history. And to do that, I talk straight to the soul. And in the current weather report, I allowed myself to get much more political than I normally have gotten in the last 4 years. And because I just couldn't keep silent any longer about the things that I see out there, and I really wanted to strike a fire in my readers, and it looks like I have, because so far I've gotten deluged with 3 times the amount of positive responses than I've ever had in 4 years of any other newsletter, and I got 1 negative response.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, you know, Cal Garrison also came out with something quite similar to yours, so it must be the time for this information to surface, and I loved what you said, and it's just so refreshing to hear other people coming out and talking about the elephant that's in the room.
Yeah.
Would you care to go into some details about this, because I think it's important to get the information out there.
Yeah, well, in the new Cosmic Weather Report, which went out yesterday, these free monthly newsletters go out on the first of each month. And in the one that went out yesterday, I was referring to a movie I had recently seen that some of your listeners may already know of, called Inside Job, and it's narrated by Matt Damon, and it's a very quick-paced and juicy documentary about how the economic collapse of the last few years was actually choreographed by a whole bunch of key bankers, head bankers, and basically fat cat corporate bankers who actually decided to really rob their own banks, which is why it's called Inside Job. And they basically found a way to make millions and millions and millions of dollars by screwing the rest of the country. And instead of throwing them in jail, President Obama appointed them the head advisors of his administration. And you know, I was outraged about this. I had already known the story because Rolling Stone had covered it in the last few years, and so the information that came out in the movie wasn't new to me, but it framed it in a very poignant way, and it just made me realize how far Obama had gone from breaking his campaign vows, and also that Obama recently went to South America, and he was talking a lot about democracy in Chile, but what he wasn't saying, and what the newspapers didn't report, is that he was really there to sell nuclear power plants to Chile because the people in this country no longer want them because they're dangerous and unsafe, as we just saw in Japan. And again, I was outraged that these politicians with smiles on their faces pretend to be helping everybody, and they're really selling us all down the river. I just couldn't. Normally, I don't write politically in my monthly newsletters, but at this time, I just, with everything happening in the world, in Wisconsin, with rebellions in the Middle East, with the nuclear meltdown and tsunami in Japan, I just couldn't take any more lies, and I just needed to get down to what's going on astrologically and sort of clear away the lies and the illusions and give people something real to go on instead. And that's basically what I did in the recent newsletter.
Yes, it's extremely well written, and it seems like no sooner have we gotten through the oil spill, which hasn't ended yet. It's just an ongoing saga, which is swept underneath the table. Then we have the nuclear meltdown and the connection to General Electric, and then that takes you down the dark road of the various elite who run the world and own the government. So, and then you get into weather wars and chemtrails and genetically modified food and other things, which, I mean, it seems like a bottomless pit. How does this all fit in with the stars?
Well, I feel the positive spin on this, Lance, because really, for your listeners who are new to me, who haven't really followed my work for the last 25 years, I'm a really positive person.
Yeah.
My books and my astrology readings are incredibly uplifting and inspiring, and yet that can't happen at the expense of truth. We need leaders now. We need people to speak out now, as in an inspirational way, but also speaking straight to the heart and soul of people who are so tired of hearing all the lies. And the positive side of this, as reflected in the stars and the way that I see it in my newsletter, is that when normal daily American existence has become this warped, this convoluted, this filled with deception, the positive thing is we no longer have to subscribe to it anymore. We know, it's like you've been going to a school for years and years, but you were never accepted there. You couldn't make the grade there, and now you don't even need to be in it anymore. And so the positive side of this is that when things get this bad and this distorted, there's no sense anymore in holding yourself back from following your own clear truth. Even if people thought you were crazy, even if you thought you were crazy, even if nobody supported you, even if you felt you needed to keep your real life on hold in order to just gain a kind of corporate existence to pay your bills, that whole world is crumbling and has become so twisted that it's a real liberation for that part of the human soul that just is really hungry for something different and can no longer wait for it to come from our leaders.
Absolutely. And as you point out, and as we all know, there really are there is no such thing as two parties. That's an illusion that's been propped up since we were born. And this comic book existence that we get from the television with advertising shoved down our throats and subliminal wavelengths is so overwhelming that many people are just turning off their televisions and shredding the newspaper.
Yes, and fortunately we have internet access all around the world, and so I have the satisfaction of knowing that my words from yesterday have circled the globe many times already, and people in different countries are reading them and forwarding them to other people. And so the positive side of mass media and technology in our time right now is I don't have to go through the New York Times anymore. Now, I can reach direct to readers in Tokyo and Africa and India and Korea, parts of Korea anyway, and Mississippi and California and Alabama.
I encourage everybody to read and to sign up for your Cosmic Weather Report and to read the April one, because it's absolutely right on the money. I mean, to the word. The other thing is, how do we deal with the frustration that is growing of being people who, threw caution to the wind and had free love and drugs during the 60s, and now we find ourselves in a world that's asleep. How do we deal with that frustration of seeing a sleeping world that's addicted to games and movie stars and television shows and the rest of it?
Well, I think that movements, social movements, have an organic lifespan to them. And when the movement erupted in the 1960s to really wake up and change the world and turn around the corporate madness and the war machine and really believe in peace and love and spirit and a whole other way, I think that the movement didn't fail. It just had to kind of have an initial spark and then go underground largely throughout the 1970s and 80s and 90s. And many of us kept that movement alive in various ways. I've been going to the Oregon Country Fair most summers for the last 30 years, which is like Woodstock every year. Burning Man was spawned from things like that. And the spirit of something real and true was very much kept alive on the west coast of the United States. I spent a lot of my life in those years living in Oregon and Washington State on the islands and in California and Santa Cruz. And I feel that what's happening now is it wasn't all in vain, the rebellion we created back then in the 60s. It just had to sink a little deeper down so that when things became so bizarre, it wasn't anymore that there's just one corrupt war in Vietnam, there's one bad war that we have to get rid of. Now it's a war that is an assault on the human soul. Every person in the world who believes in love